Washington has just made one of the biggest investment moves of the year, and quietly, thousands of everyday investors are wondering if they should follow the same path. But before you assume, I'm about to hand you a stock that's guaranteed to make you rich, slow down for a minute, pour yourself a cup of coffee, settle in, and let's talk about why that way of thinking often leads people in the wrong direction. I've been investing long enough to know that the biggest mistakes usually begin with excitement, not logic. I still remember buying my very first shares with money. I earned mowing lawns as a teenager. I also remember losing a painful portion of those savings after listening to a man at a small diner who confidently claimed his cousin worked for a company that was supposedly about to take off. It never did. The stock collapsed instead, and while the money disappeared, the lesson stayed with me. Looking back, that lesson has been worth far more than the dollars I lost because it completely changed the way I evaluate every investment opportunity that comes my way. Every few months, the same cycle repeats itself. A government agency announces funding for a company, a famous investor reveals a new position, or a politician files paperwork showing they bought shares in a particular business. Within hours, the internet explodes. Headlines appear everywhere. Videos promise that this is the opportunity everyone has been waiting for. Social media fills with people insisting that important investors know something the public doesn't. The message is always the same. Buy now before it's too late. That fear of missing out spreads incredibly fast, and before long, many people are investing without ever understanding what they're actually buying. That's exactly why I wanted to make this video. I'm not here to tell you which stock deserves your money. I'm here to show you how to think whenever you see headlines like these, because learning to think clearly will benefit you far longer than chasing any single investment ever could. Let's begin with the facts instead of the hype. Yes, government officials are allowed to own stocks, and many of them actively invest. It's also true that governments sometimes provide grants, loans, subsidies, or strategic funding to private companies that operate in industries considered important for the country's future. That might include semiconductor manufacturing, energy production, advanced technology, or other sectors viewed as strategically valuable. When government support and well-known investors appear to be moving toward the same company, it's perfectly normal to become curious. I certainly do. Curiosity isn't the problem. Curiosity is healthy. The real danger begins when curiosity suddenly becomes urgency. The moment your thoughts change from, "That's interesting," to, "I have to buy this before everyone else does." Emotions have quietly taken control of your decision, and emotions have emptied more investment accounts than bad companies ever have. I often compare investing to farming, because that's the environment I grew up around. A farmer never plants a seed simply because the neighbor harvested an excellent crop the year before. First, he studies his own land. He checks the soil, the weather, the season, and whether that particular crop even belongs in his field. Investing deserves the same patience. It doesn't matter who else is buying a stock. It doesn't matter how many headlines it generates or how many television experts are talking about it. The only question that truly matters is whether the business underneath that stock deserves a place in your portfolio at today's price and for your own financial goals. Someone else's investment strategy isn't automatically your strategy, just as someone else's farmland isn't yours. Good investing has always been personal. Whenever I evaluate any company, I keep coming back to 3 simple principles. They're not complicated, and they certainly aren't exciting enough to become viral headlines, but they've protected me from more bad decisions than I can count. The first principle is the quality of the business itself. Forget the famous names for a moment. Ignore the headlines completely. Ask yourself one simple question. If this company disappeared from the news tomorrow, would it still be a business worth owning? That's the real test. A strong company creates products or services that people genuinely need, earns money consistently, or has a realistic path toward doing so, and avoids taking on more debt than it can reasonably handle. Some businesses attract attention because of what they might become years from now. Others receive almost no attention because they quietly produce reliable profits year after year. Surprisingly, those quieter companies often end up rewarding patient investors far more than the flashy ones everyone talks about. Let me share a small story that illustrates exactly what I mean. Years ago, one of my neighbors owned a small hardware store. It wasn't modern or glamorous. The wooden floors creaked whenever customers walked through the aisles, and there was an old cat that spent most afternoons sleeping in the front window. Then one day, a massive home improvement chain announced plans to open a brand new store just 10 minutes away. Almost everyone assumed my neighbor's business wouldn't survive. People believed the larger company would simply overwhelm him with lower prices, bigger advertising budgets, and endless inventory. But something unexpected happened. Instead of trying to compete on size, he focused even more on what made his business unique. He greeted customers by name. He remembered which families lived in which neighborhoods. If someone brought in a rusty hinge from a house built decades earlier, he knew exactly which replacement part would fit. The larger chain could offer thousands of products, but it couldn't offer decades of personal relationships and experience. 20 years later, that little hardware store was still serving the community. Meanwhile, the giant store that everyone thought would dominate the market had already changed ownership multiple times and operated under completely different names. That experience taught me something I never forgot. The strongest businesses aren't always the biggest or the loudest. Real business quality comes from building something valuable beneath the surface that continues serving customers year after year, whether the media is paying attention or not. Headlines come and go. Popularity comes and goes. A genuinely good business has the ability to keep creating value long after people stop talking about it.